Widely regarded as professional wrestling's preeminent journalist for over 40 years now, Dave Meltzer is, let's say, rather divisive among both fans and those within the business. The merits of Meltzer's extensive work and his personal preference when it comes to wrestling style can be debated, but there are some wrestlers out there who simply just cannot stand the guy and have made their feelings known in a very public way. I'm Adam Pritchard from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 wrestlers who had heat with Dave Meltzer. Join us. Number 10, Ryback. I know what you're thinking, it's not like Ryback to be outspoken about something, is it? The big guy has never been a so-called internet darling. On the contrary, online fans have had more bad things than good to say about him, especially since CM Punk's scathing criticism during that infamous Art of Wrestling podcast appearance. Well, Ryback is hardly shy when it comes to throwing live rounds at others, with our man Dave coming in for some stiff shots. On September 7th, 2020, Ryback lashed out at Meltzer on Twitter, writing, "I firmly believe the world would be a better place without Dave Meltzer. He is the most dangerous kind of mark there is and puts lies out for profit, creating hate for people he dislikes. He makes money off other diseased marks, but does so in a horrible way." I'm not actually sure what it was that prompted the Rizbiz to go in studs up on Big Daddy Dave, but he certainly let it be known that he has issues with the Wrestling Observer writer. Hey, perhaps he was upset that he never got that elusive 5-star match rating he clearly wanted. Oh, and he never will either due to his legally binding retirement. Number 9, Rusev. Ryback's attack on Melty came just days after another former WWE star, Miro aka Rusev, let him have it with both barrels. The Redeemer's wrath was incurred after Meltzer put out a report that essentially said his wife Lana taking third-party work was the straw that broke the camel's back and led to Vince McMahon banning WWE stars from doing so in the future. The ravishing Russian herself addressed this on Twitter, but her hubby took things further, mincing no words while tearing into Meltzer during a Twitch stream. There was plenty of effing and jeffing as Rusev vowed that Meltzer would one day burn in hell, claimed the reporter had an agenda against his missus, and questioned the correctness of his reporting. A week later, tempers had evidently cooled down some as the Bulgarian brute offered an apology, saying he didn't want to start any feuds or wish harm on an elderly guy, but asked Meltzer not to talk about his wife or to report on what he considered false information. A couple of years later, the two got into it again when Miro appeared to question Meltzer's report about his AEW absence. Number 8, Payton Royce. One element of Meltzer's writing, which has not gone down well, is his comments about the appearance of some performers, particularly female ones. ECW valet Francine has been outspoken about how Meltzer's comments about her body during the 90s affected her, while something he said about then WWE star Payton Royce had many of her colleagues, including tag partner Billie Kay, Beth Phoenix, and Ember Moon, brandishing their pitchforks in support of her. A Wrestling Observer radio clip of Meltzer discussing how the Iconics were adapting to the main roster included him making some ill-judged and clumsy comments about Peyton's appearance and breast enhancement surgery. Responding on Twitter, Royce wrote, "So what would you have me do, Dave? Starve myself? This is how nightmares for young women start. The females in your life must be proud." To be fair to Meltzer, he did almost immediately issue an apology, writing, "I'd like to apologize to you. You are an exceedingly attractive woman. I do realize the lengths and pressures on women in the entertainment world to maintain unnatural looks at times, and I'm glad that you pointed this out. If you would like to discuss this further, I'd be happy to take you out for dinner. Maybe a movie? Thanks a lot. Love, Uncle Dave." Alright, so I might have made that last part up. Number 7, Seth Rollins. In the wake of the storm that erupted following Meltzer's comments about Peyton Royce, Seth Rollins was one of those to throw shade at the journalist, tweeting, "-6 stars, Dave." The comments about his co-workers is far from where it ends when it comes to Seth's problems with Meltzer, because a year later, Rollins once again took to Twitter to discredit Dave. This time, it concerned a report that Meltzer had penned about a supposed rah-rah meeting given backstage at Raw after the horrendous trip back from Saudi Arabia for Crown Jewel 2019. After David suggested that the architect had been an active participant by giving a speech during the meeting, Seth wrote that Meltzer was, at best, a purveyor of misinformation, or at worst, an outright vindictive liar. I hope it's the former. After Dave doubled down during a subsequent report, Rollins, who had denied such involvement via a statement, wrote, "No, Dave, my problem is that you're spreading complete lies. I gave no speech. I said nothing before, during, or after the meeting. So either you or your source is full of it. Either way, it's a bold-faced lie, and I kindly ask you to quit pushing it. In more recent times, Seth has blasted Meltzer's completely arbitrary star rating system. Number 6, Kevin Nash. If you read the Wrestling Observer newsletter during the 90s, you might get the sneaking suspicion that Dave Meltzer was not a big fan of Kevin Nash. Generally speaking, Meltzer appeared to view Big Sexy as an overpaid, lazy, pot-stirring waste of space who never had a good match that didn't also involve Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels. Generally speaking, of course. Nope, Dave was not ready with praise for Nash, and his comments only got more cutting when Nash reportedly became booker in late 90s WCW. Nash, unsurprisingly, does not care for Meltzer or his low opinion of him or his work. In various shoot interviews and podcasts over the years, Big Daddy Cool has thrown shade at Dave, questioning why, if he has such a genius wrestling mind, he hasn't worked in the business in any capacity beyond running his own newsletter. Nash has said that he never liked Meltzer and never will, and that opinion is unlikely to change, especially with Meltzer making comments like, "Logan Paul is a better wrestler than Kevin Nash ever was." Too far, Dave. Too far. Number 5, CM Punk. The frustrating thing about CM Punk is you never know what he really thinks about somebody because he always keeps his opinions to himself. The straight-edge superstar is, of course, one of the most controversial names of the past couple of decades and is up there with his idol Bret Hart when it comes to shooting on those he believes have done him wrong. As far as Meltzer is concerned, Punk took issue with Dave, saying that he initially refused to lose the AEW World title to Jon Moxley after suffering an injury in the summer of 2022 and only did so because Tony Khan put his foot down and demanded he drop the strap. Punk branded Meltzer a liar for his reporting, with Dave conceding that he didn't tell the whole story with his message board post. In more recent times, Punk has used Meltzer as a stick to beat AEW with, claiming that some on the AEW roster were more concerned with what some goof rates their matches out of 5 rather than how many people are in the building. Number 4, Jim Cornette. Dave Meltzer and Jim Cornette have known each other for decades and at one time considered themselves to be good friends. In fact, it was actually Cornette who came up with using a star system for rating matches after others had done it for movies, which was then popularized by his childhood friend Norman Dooley's newsletter. Two well-versed historians of the sport who had fairly similar ideas about the business, Meltzer and Cornette were thick as thieves for the longest time. And then something changed, namely Dave's tastes. Because when Meltzer really started piling praise on the likes of Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, Cornette, who makes a small fortune from his podcast and associated ventures, began cutting promos on his pal. Things weren't too vitriolic to begin with, but Cornette ramped up his attacks when Meltzer started firing back with claims that the wrestling business had passed Jim by. Cornette has claimed that Meltzer tried to reach out to him, but he immediately shot the attempt down because these grown men are actually 16, not in their 60s, and must continue to call each other names online because they don't enjoy the same type of fake fighting. Number 3, Bruce Pritchard. For a couple of decades there, Bruce Pritchard was one of Vince McMahon's right-hand men and a powerful figure within WWE. When he was on the outs with the company, Pritchard started a successful podcast where one of the main themes became his attempts to discredit Meltzer's past reporting. Routinely knocking Dave for dealing in rumor and innuendo, if Big Brucey P is to be believed, Meltzer has never gotten a single story correct and doesn't know the first thing about the wrestling business. It must be said that Pritchard is, of course, a staunch WWE loyalist to the death and seems to go out of his way to defend the company for things that to some would be considered indefensible as part of his acts. What started out as shtick, however, has turned more nasty in recent years, with Pritchard personally attacking Meltzer with insults such as branding him a piece of you-know-what. Dave, for his part, has said that he believes Brother Love started his anti-Meltzer ranting as a joke, but gradually worked himself into a shoot and has now convinced himself that he hates him for real. I'm sure Bruce will object to Dave's opinion. Number 2, Eric Bischoff. If Bruce Pritchard on his podcast has made expressing his anti-Meltzer sentiment a feature that fans expect to hear just about every episode, then Eric Bischoff has made rallying against the scribe his whole personality. I mean, seriously, Eazy-E just can't seem to open his mouth these days without going on a tirade about how Dave Meltzer is wrong, always has been wrong, and always will be wrong because he's a terrible reporter and never writes or says anything based in fact, calling him a cancer to the wrestling business. I mean, if Dave Meltzer reported that the the sky was blue, Bischoff would probably knock him out for not describing the exact hue before questioning what window he was looking out of. Meltzer has been critical of Bischoff in the past, especially with regards to Eric's decision-making when he was in charge of WCW, but he's also been quick to give Bischoff credit for his good ideas as well as his performance as an on-screen authority figure. None of that matters to Bischoff, of course, because he's decided that he has a vendetta against the Wrestling Observer writer, and he's going to let everybody know about it again and again and, well, forever if he has to. Number 1, Hulk Hogan. Unlike his pal Bischoff, Hulk Hogan hasn't spent a great deal of time publicly complaining about Dave Meltzer. But make no mistake about it, the Hulkster had a bone to pick with him too. Aside from complaining about the mark Dave Meltzer's habit of persistently hating on him during an appearance on his old pal Bubba the Love Sponge's radio show, Hogan has made his feelings about Dave and his rag sheet perfectly clear. At WCW's 1995 World War III pay-per-view, Terry cut a promo where he questioned the credibility of Meltzer's reporting without naming him after Dave wrote that Randy Savage had sustained a legitimate triceps tear, which he had. He also scoffed at Meltzer, reporting that the Giant was going to win the eponymous 60-man Battle Royal, something that was actually never printed in the Observer, as Hogan screamed, "Observer this, brother!" and burnt an apparent copy of the newsletter. Meltzer would later call it one of the weirdest interviews in wrestling history, and took it as a compliment. According to Ric Flair in his autobiography, To Be the Man, Hogan was obsessed with the Observer and would constantly whinge about what was written about him backstage during this era. Looks like that hot dog coloured skin isn't as thick as you'd like it to be, eh, Hulk?